morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on a Friday for a very important workshop to learn about our new small business grant programs. As Shirin mentioned, I'm Eric Romero. I'm a project manager here in the city of Long Beach. I work on a team that does a lot of different things, but at a high level, we help people start, sustain, and grow their businesses by overseeing loan programs, grant programs, connecting folks to great technical assistance in the city, like the technical assistance delivered through Accelerate Uptown and Ronnie's House. And our job here is really to support small businesses in any way that we can. I've prepared a short presentation for you all today. I'm going to load that up right now, so please bear with me as we get started, but hopefully it'll be a helpful presentation. We'll try to keep it as informal as possible, so don't feel like we have to be overly formal here. Really, the purpose is to get information in your hands and to help you get started on this application process. So give me just 1 second as I load this up, and then we'll get going.
So as Eric's doing that, I just want to mention that we're recording this workshop. If you ask any questions and don't want to be recorded, let us know and we'll stop the recording.
Great. And can everyone see the presentation on the screen? Yes?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Green light.
So, great. So I'm going to go through a lot of stuff today. I'll try not to overwhelm you, but if you need me to pause at any time to say, hold up, can you clarify that? And I'll do my best to. I will also say that I'm going to do my best to answer as many questions as I can. If for some reason or another I cannot answer a question, I promise that I will get back to you, or Shirin will get back to you with an answer to your question. So thank you for working with us. I'm going to start with just a little introduction, which I think I already covered. I'll talk about our partnership with Accelerate Uptown. I'll provide just some context here about the Coronavirus Relief Fund so that you understand how this funding came to be. I'll provide a high-level overview of this new Small Business Transition and Technology Grant Program. Then I'll walk through the application process. So this is really the meat of the presentation. So I'll provide an overview of what the application workflow looks like generally for the end user, the applicant. We'll talk about some of the required documents. And then I'll just do like a little demonstration. I'll provide you a little preview of what this application looks like so that you can start to become familiar with it. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A. So if that sounds good, I'm just going to jump right in. So I really want to give a big shout out to Shirin and Accelerate Uptown and Ronnie's House, which is an affiliate of Accelerate Uptown, or vice versa. And they've been doing some great work over the last few years to support small businesses here in the city of Long Beach with really a focus on equity and economic inclusion. They have a great location up in North Long Beach and have been doing a lot of work to support our businesses there and connect them to information, to advocate for our small businesses, and really ensure that they're taking a leadership role to connect people to the resources that are so needed right now. We know this is an unprecedented time in the history of our world. We know it's a very difficult time in the history of our world, and we cannot do this alone. And we need the support of great partners like Accelerate Uptown and Ronnie's House in order to ensure that we're serving the community in the way that we need to. So I just want to thank Shirin for coordinating this, for ensuring that we're connecting folks to this information about this new grant program. The program just launched, so we're doing this as quickly as possible to connect you to this information. I want to thank her for her leadership and for inviting us to be a partner at the table. If you're not familiar with Accelerate Uptown, please visit their website. We work with them to support our small businesses, and if you register for their services, they can connect you to all kinds of different resources and support you through the application process as well. So with that, I'm just going to jump in to provide some background on CARES Act and the Coronavirus Relief Fund that the City of Long Beach has developed, which is ultimately funding this new Small Business Transition and Technology Grant Program. So just bear with me as I walk you through this. So in March 2020, Congress and the President signed the CARES Act bill into law that ultimately provided funding for a lot of different things at the federal level and the state level and the local level. They provided some direct funding to different agencies depending on the size of their population. And unfortunately, the City of Long Beach was under the 500,000 threshold to receive direct funding from the federal government. So instead, the federal government provided funding to the state of California, and our local leadership, our mayor, our city council, our government affairs team advocated strongly to get a piece of that pie. So we were able to successfully secure around $40 million through the CARES Act funding and created the Long Beach Coronavirus Relief Fund. And on July 14, 2020, our city council made some big decisions around how we're going to spend this funding. So there are links to the application or to that information here on this presentation that I will share with Sharon and she can share with you all. But they made decisions around how to allocate the funding. And right off the top, 19 million is going to go straight to reimbursing the city for a lot of unexpected costs, right? So everything from setting up COVID-19 testing facilities, to personal protective equipment like face masks and face shields and hand sanitizer, and a bunch of staff time that we were not expecting to take on to respond to the public health emergency, and then the economic emergency that also resulted of the public health emergency and the health orders that resulted in businesses having to close. A large chunk of funding was also dedicated to what we call community support. Important things like vital things to ensure residents can live sustainably and thrive, like ensuring that they have food. Food access is a big part of that. Black health equity, so ensuring that our community-based organizations that support our Black population here in Long Beach really have the right kind of infrastructure support to deliver vital services to our population. This is especially important now as we're starting to really accelerate our conversation around racial equity and racial justice here. And a lot of funding will also go to what we're calling digital inclusion. So we know that the digital divide, we've seen it in reality take off while it's existed, but we've seen the real effects of it during COVID-19 as schools are having to close, for example, and our children are having to take Zoom classes from home. And we know that households that don't have access to enough technology devices or any at all, or have spotty internet connections, are really at a huge disadvantage right now. So a large portion of funding will go to what we call community support. Another pot of funding will also go to business recovery and resiliency efforts that will ultimately fund a variety of different programs. And one of them is a small business transition and technology grants program. I know this is a lot of information, but I think it's important for folks to just understand the context of how ultimately this funding came to be and the new program that we're going to be talking about today. So this is the program that we're going to really be focusing on today. Again, because it has a really long name, I'm just going to call it SBTT moving forward. If not, I'm just going to keep saying this really long name and I'm going to lose my voice by the end of this presentation. So at a high level, this program will support businesses based in Long Beach that have been impacted by COVID-19. There's $3.3 million that's currently available for this program. And really the focus is to ensure that we can help our small businesses make it through this very difficult time. There are a few different pots of funding or grants really for this program. And there are two of them specifically that we're going to be talking about today. The first one is working capital, and that's up to $5,000 that's potentially available for each applicant. And working capital is basically flexible money that businesses can use on a wide range of needs, business needs. So commercial rent, for example, we know that a lot of small businesses are having a hard time making their lease payments right now. We do have an eviction moratorium and rent deferment period in place, but it's not a rent holiday, meaning that those rent payments aren't waived. So those rent payments are stacking up, and we know that folks need help making those rent payments. Inventory, so supplies that you might need to operate your business, whether that's a bakery and you need flour and sugar and milk and eggs, or whether that's a retail shop and you need to buy some more shirts or some more jewelry, for example, in order to provide goods to your customer base. Payroll, we know that one of the biggest expenses for businesses is their staff. So people are having a hard time with reduced cash flow, paying their staff and keeping their staff on board. So this is one eligible expenditure for the working capital grant. Personal protective equipment, of course, we know that the cost of doing business has increased tremendously for businesses as they have to comply with the local health orders. They have to buy face shields, face masks, disinfectants, wipes, gloves, installing plexiglass so that they can protect their employees and customers. And that list just continues to get longer and longer. So certainly that's an eligible expense as a part of this grant program. And lastly, and there are more things that can fit in this working capital pot, but our last example here are what we call furniture, fixtures, and equipment that help businesses operate safely. So that again is like the plexiglass, for example, or if you need to make some internal improvements in your store so that you can more safely operate and create enough space between employees and customers. That's the kind of stuff that's included in what we call furniture, fixtures, and equipment. The next grant is a technology grant that people can get up to $2,000 for. And really the purpose of this grant is for technology solutions that help reduce the spread of COVID-19. So think about contactless payment systems, for example. I think it's a lot more sanitary if we're not paying with cash and coins. It's better to do it over different systems that exist, and there are a variety of platforms out there. Appointment scheduling systems, for example. So like if you own a barbershop and it's really on a first come, first serve, and folks are just lining up to get a haircut. I know I need one soon. It's a lot more, it's a lot safer if we have appointment systems where people can schedule online, for example, and have their appointment ready to go. They know when they come in, they know when they're supposed to leave. Queuing systems. So we see that at some larger retailers that they have queuing systems, which basically tell you which cashier is ready to go that can serve a customer. And then there are other systems out there that will help reduce the spread of COVID-19. It also can be utilized to help improve a business's online presence. So unfortunately, we saw loud and clear that a lot of businesses that didn't have an online presence, so they didn't have a website or an online store, or just didn't have a good digital marketing and communication strategy, so think like email blasts or social media, they were at a tremendous disadvantage once the COVID-19 local health orders went into place. As their indoor operations were limited, but completely, like entirely eliminated, or as they had really reduced occupancy, like 25%, as they started to loosen up these local health orders. We know that people now more than ever before need a better online presence. So there are a wide range of things that can go into this technology grant, but those are some examples of what can be covered through this grant. The application for this program went live last week on Tuesday, and we've been getting some interest. We still need more folks to complete their application, and it's available online. So this is just the high level program description. This is what the program is, and then we're going to jump into some more details of this program more specifically. Before I jump into the details, I do want to pause to see if there are any just quick questions about this. If not, we can jump into a larger Q&A at the end.
I do have a question. Do you have to live in the city of Long Beach?
No, you do have to have a Long Beach business license though. So you have to conduct business in the city of Long Beach, but you do not have to be a Long Beach resident.
Eric, sorry. If I have sent the application, I already applied last Wednesday. By when will I get a response?
Yep. So if you've already applied, then we can, we're currently reviewing these applications. We're hoping to have a 2 to 3 week turnaround before we actually give you an official response. But we should be reaching out shortly. And maybe before, because it seems like that we're going to get a wide range of questions, let's actually just pause the Q&A. Let me go through the rest of this presentation, and then we'll do Q&A at the end, because I imagine that I may answer some of these questions through it. So I apologize for that, but I'll just continue. So this is just a high-level overview of this application process for this SBTT program. So we have a web page that's available on our website where you can ultimately access this information that I'm covering, but also find the actual application. I'm going to walk you through this after. So this is just at a high level. You will then go into our online application portal that we've developed specifically for this program to help expedite the process of completing these applications. You will upload basically everything onto there. You will complete that application, and of course, if you cannot complete it online because you don't have access to a computer or internet or a printer and scanner, for example, we can make paper copies available to you. We also have a number of small business outreach pop-ups that we're organizing, but we'd like to also work through our partners like Accelerate Uptown to help you complete these applications if you need assistance. Once you've submitted a complete application, and a complete application means you've answered all of the questions, you've uploaded all of the required documents, and that you've submitted the entire application. So everything that is required as a part of the application process needs to be uploaded online and submitted through the Zoom Grants application portal. City staff will then screen the application and the required documentation to ensure that you're eligible for this funding. I'll go through some of those required documents later in this presentation. And also, as I mentioned, I'll walk you through the actual application itself. You will either be contacted by city staff directly or one of our partner. We have a long-standing relationship with the National Development Council. They help us to develop our loan programs and our grant programs. And because this is a large program and kind of an all hands on deck moment, they're also helping us to review and screen applications as a part of this program. Once we've screened your application for eligibility and have ultimately reviewed the details of your application, city staff will then contact you and let you know of the status of your application. And then once you get approved for an application, you have to sign a grant agreement, essentially stating this is how much money you've been approved for. This is what generally this grant funding will go to, and you will include that as a part of your application. And then we'll have you sign, we'll sign as well, and then we can begin the process of actually issuing payment. So that's a high level overview of just the general workflow for this application for this program. There are some required documents as a part of this, and I want you all to know that I think while some of this stuff may seem cumbersome or a lot to ask for, ultimately these are federal funds, and the city was awarded this funding through the state of California, specifically to support COVID-19 response, and in this case, to support businesses impacted by COVID-19. So we have to have some kind of justification to award a business funding, and we have to have some documentation to back that up, because the federal government can audit us at any point to ensure that the city did a good job at spending the money on eligible expenditures. So we do have to capture some of this information. We try to reduce the levels of information that we're asking for, but this is just the basic information that we are expected to collect through the funding that we receive from the state and the federal government. So to show some of the financial hardship, and to understand the business's financial status, we are asking for your latest tax returns, the 29 business tax return, if available. And if you ask for an extension, we can get a copy of that extension in some kind of internal financial document to show us how the business is performing. A monthly 2020 profit and loss statement could be a good example of that, or an even better example can be a comparison between 2020 and 2019 and how you've been performing. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have like an accountant complete all of this information. We have had people that have developed some of their own profit and loss and provided their own financial statements, and we're working with them, and we will provide you that hand-on support so that you truly understand the information that you need to provide us. We'll ask for a copy of your photo ID as a part of this program. We'll also, in order to issue payment, we'll have you complete a W-9 form, or that includes taxpayer identification number and certification. And then specifically, if you apply for the technology grant, we'll ask for some additional documentation. Like, for example, it could be a quote for a technology system or solution that you're looking to get. So for example, if you're gonna buy something on Amazon or through a local retailer and it's gonna cost $300 and you have that included through your application to show how much it'll cost. Invoices, if you've already gotten, if you haven't paid for it yet, but if you have already started the process of working through a vendor to procure a specific technology solution and you have an invoice that you need to pay in order to actually get that hardware, for example, that can certainly serve as supporting documentation. And then also we are okay with reimbursing costs as long as they've been purchased as a result to the COVID-19 response or between, say, March 4th, 2020 through now, and you have receipts for that technology solution, we can reimburse you for some of those costs as well. So these are some of the required documents. These are also spelled out as you work through the application. And again, you will upload all of this stuff through the Zoom Grants application portal. So now I'm gonna jump in and actually give you a demonstration of how this all looks. So if you could bear with me again, could you all see this here? Yep, Give me a thumbs up if you could see where it says NDC 50 years. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. So this is when you go to our website, and let me actually take a step back here to show you what that website looks like. So I'm going to stop screen share and I'm going to show you this website here. And this is where we're getting into the nitty-gritty details of what this application process will look like. And I want to make sure that you all can see the actual web interfaces that you will be dealing with. So this is our economic development website here. You can find it at longbeach.gov, www.longbeach.gov/4BIZ. And ultimately, you would click on small business grants. It's a very clear button on our website. Let me actually just go to it so that you can see it here. So it's this button here, small business and nonprofit grants. And if at any point you can't see any of this, just let me know, and I will be sure to take a step back. So you click on this button here, small business and nonprofit grants, and then it'll take you to this page here where you can see the different grants that we have currently available. There are 2 grants that are live. One is still in the works, our nonprofit relief grant, but we're gonna click on this one here, which is our SBTT grant, our CARES Act SBTT grant. And you'll click on that web page. Then you'll go to a landing page for this grant, which essentially includes a lot of the information that I've already covered, right? So it's all right here. And to start the application, you would go through here where it says SBTT grant application. It's also available here at the bottom. It says apply here, and we might actually move this to the top as well so that folks can see that more clearly. And you click on that link there. This is loading, so please bear with me. And this takes you now to the main Zoom Grants application portal webpage. So before you click apply, you'll have to actually create an account. So you'll see on the right-hand side here that we have an area where you can put in some information and create an account. I want to note that some of you that have already applied through Zoom Grants for what we're calling our Small Business Restart Grant that was specifically created to help businesses that were impacted by the civil unrest that occurred on May 31st through property damages or looting. Some of you may have already applied through this application portal. If you've already applied, and you have your username, your email really, and your password, you just go to the top here and you just type that in and then you log in. If you have not at all utilized the Zoom Grants application portal and have not applied for that Small Business Restart Grant, then you would need to create a new account. So it's pretty simple. You just put in your email, your password, your first name and last name, and then you create a new account. You have to have a password here. It gives you all the details. It has to be between 18 to 16 characters, and you need to have at least 1 letter and 1 number. And all of this information is confidential. We do not sell it or share it with anyone else. It's all confidential and kept and maintained by the city of Long Beach. So I'm going to just jump in now to continue this demonstration to start to give you an idea of what this actual application will look like. I do want to note that if at any point you have a hard time with the application, you can certainly contact Sharon and Accelerate Uptown so that they can help guide you through this process. They're a great resource, and I will continue to say that. You can also call me or our 4Biz line, which is 562-570-4249. But if you're having issues with the actual application itself, the Zoom Grants application, we will provide you, I will actually probably include it in the chat function before we wrap up here, this presentation here, but you will actually need to contact Zoom Grants. They have a great customer service team and have been able to troubleshoot any of those issues. By and large, most folks aren't dealing with any issues with the platform, so we're hopeful that that will continue to be the case. So this is essentially, once you create your username and your password and you log in, this is what it's going to look like for you. It'll have a general description of the grant program, which I've already provided for you, just at a high level. You know, it talks about the working capital grant, what can go into that, the technology grant, the eligible expenditures under that, and it'll clearly state, again, the required documents for this program. Then this is the preview, so this is not what it'll look like exactly for you, but it gives you a good idea. Then it'll go into a summary of essentially how you apply. So what the application process is, what I provided to you already, and then our scoring system. We do have a scoring system for this program because as with everything, we have limited resources. And so we're going to try to prioritize some of our smaller businesses and then some of our businesses that are located in our low to moderate income areas, and also businesses that have been more impacted by the COVID-19 health orders because they've not been allowed to operate indoors at all. So think like our bars, for example, our restaurants. Think about our personal care establishments, so barbershops, beauty salons, nail salons that have had very limited operations. So we're going to ask you a series of different questions, and you'll see that as a part of the application process that will ultimately help to create a score. I do want to note that while for the purposes of this program, we're scoring things as high need, moderate need, and low need for each application, I do want to acknowledge how difficult it is for businesses right now. And I can only imagine how difficult it is. I am not a small business owner. I'm going to just say that outright. But we know that while it says low need, you may actually have a high need. And this is just the language that we're using for purposes of the scoring of this program. So if you score as a high need applicant, you're eligible to receive up to $5,000, the maximum for the working capital grant and the maximum for the technology grant. If your score is a moderate need applicant, then you can get $2,500 for the working capital and up to $1,000 for the technology grant. If you score as low need, we're going to place you on a wait list. And if there's still funding left over, then we will ultimately issue you a grant and you will be eligible for up to $2,500 for working capital and $1,000 for the technology grant. Again, we're trying to prioritize equity here, trying to ensure that we're supporting the businesses that have been hardest hit, though we do realize that every single business, for the most part, has been hit pretty hard. So now we're going to jump into what the actual application questions will look like, and you, I think, already have a good understanding. We'll ask you for some basic information. So first name, last name, your phone number, and your email for the actual person that is completing the application. Then basically we'll hit next, and the application portal will let you know if you're missing something. It won't let you move on to the next section until you've submitted all of the information. And we'll scroll down here. We'll ask you about the eligibility, some eligibility questions. So there are some businesses that are not eligible for this grant program, and they are listed here. And you will have to click essentially if you're one of these businesses or none of the above. I know there might be some nonprofits on this call, and nonprofits, again, aren't eligible for this grant program, but we're in the process of building out a nonprofit relief grant program that will mirror in some ways this program and provide some working capital support for our nonprofits. So if you want to learn more about that, you can contact me, or also you can work through Sharon. I always provide Sharon the latest information, so she has a wealth of information about what is and isn't available and some of the timeframes around when some new programs might launch. We'll then ask you what type of grant you're interested in applying for, either the working capital or the technology grant, or both. You can apply for both. And then we'll ask you if you specifically are interested in the technology grant program, whether or not you've already purchased the solution. So whether you're asking for reimbursement for the solution. And then we'll of course ask you for that supporting documentation that I talked about earlier, related to the technology solution that you may have procured or that you will procure. We'll ask you about the type of business that you are. So are you a corporation? Are you a limited liability company? Are you a partnership? Are you a sole proprietorship? If you do not know, you can work again through Sharon, for example, and she can help you really think that through or understand it. There's also some great resources. I personally like Investopedia. I don't know how many people actually go on that website, but it clearly spells out what is a corporation, what is a limited liability company, what is a partnership, and what is a sole proprietorship. A lot of the businesses that we're working with are sole proprietors, meaning that there really is no separation between their personal income and their business income. They're kind of treated as one and the same. Corporations or limited liability companies have a little bit of a separation between the person that operates that business and then this actual other entity, which is the business. But if you need some specific support around that, please don't hesitate to reach out to Sharon or to contact me as well. We'll ask you for information on when you started your business, so some general background information on your business. Also, what type of business that you operate. So is that a restaurant? Is that a bakery? Is that a nail salon? Or is it some other type of business in the city of Long Beach? We'll also ask you for a brief history of your business. You don't need to provide a ton of information. We have up to 1,000 characters max, but if you can do it in less than that, that's great with us as well. But just, the type of business that you are, the type of products that you provide, customers, and if there's any general kind of seasonality in your sales. So for example, is it really busy in the summertime because you're an ice cream shop? And does it slow down in the winter? Or are you really busy in the holiday season because it's a retail shop and you sell women's dress shoes, for example, and a lot of folks are going to be treating their wives and their daughters to great shoes, for example. Just any detail. You don't have to provide a whole lot of information, but just enough for us to know, some more information about your business. We'll ask you about the number of employees that you have. We'll ask about full-time equivalent. So an FTE for us means a full-time employee, 40 hours a week. So for example, if you employ 2 people that each work 20 hours a week, that equates to 1 FTE. And so we'll ask you about the number of employees that you currently have. And then as I mentioned earlier, we need to justify that the funds that we're providing to businesses are to businesses that have been impacted by COVID-19. So we'll ask for a financial hardship statement, a general description of what has been the business's situation from March when this COVID-19 pandemic really, our response really started to about now. So for example, if I'm Eric Romero and I operate a restaurant, I would likely say the public health order went into effect in March. The local health orders required me to shut down my business immediately, which I lost, a bunch of revenue. I won't get into those specifics here, but a bunch of revenue. I had to lay off a few employees. I had to furlough a few others. I was allowed to operate some outdoor operations thanks to the City's Open Streets initiative, but have still been financially impacted because I'm not allowed to have full operations. That's the kind of information that we're looking to get, just some general descriptions around the kinds of impacts that your business has had due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. We'll also ask you about whether or not you have any federal, state, or local tax liens. This is basically whenever you've had, and I think the federal government is more interested in the federal, but if you've had like a federal loan, for example, or some kind of other a debt that you've not been able to repay, and the federal government has issued an order to take back like an asset that you've pledged as a part of that, we want to know that information as well. And then we'll ask for your business license number. If you're not familiar with your business license number, it starts with the BU, and then I think there are 6 or so characteristics or numbers after that. But if you have a hard time finding your business license number, again, you can work through Sharon. You can contact me directly, but she works with me all of the time, so you can ask her and she can track that down. We can help you track that information down. But you'll need your business license number as a part of this. I do want to note that while we're requiring a business license, we do understand that some folks have let their business license expire, not because they wanted to, but because of the cash flow issue, because how hard it is right now. So if your business license expired, I believe it's after mid-March or so, we will not count that against you. We will still allow you to apply for this program, and there won't be any restrictions around you applying, essentially. So we do recognize that folks have had a hard time financially and haven't been able to renew their business license. Also, the city currently isn't adding any late penalties to business licenses. So for that reason, we know that some folks have not paid their business license renewal bill, which you have to renew annually. We'll also ask you if you've laid off any or furloughed any employees and provide us any details. So I've laid off 5, for example, and I've furloughed 2. That kind of information will be requested. We'll also ask you if the business has had any revenue at all since March 15th. And of course, we'll utilize all of this information to define whether or not the applicant is high need, moderate need, or low need. And then we'll ask you if the business has been forced to close indoor operations due to the state and local health orders. And we can find that information online through the City of Long Beach website. And of course, if you need help finding that information, I'll continue to say this, you can work through Sharon to get it, or you can work through us. But if you work through Sharon, she'll work with us anyway. So it's a good way to just get that information. So it's a simple yes or no answer. And of course, we want to know how folks heard about this opportunity. So was it through our social media postings, whether it was Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or word of mouth? I think there's also TikTok and others, but I'm not familiar with all that, though I'm still kind of a young guy. I think there's a younger generation that's doing all kinds of stuff that I'm not familiar with at this point. Once I became a dad, things kind of changed for me. We want to know if it's word of mouth. We've been having these pop-ups, and there's been a lot of folks that have been coming to us and said, hey, you know, I have a neighbor that comes to my shop, or a customer that comes in and let me know about this. We want to know that. We want to know if it was through a community-based organization like Accelerate Uptown, an email blast, or some other way. Ultimately, we want to know where folks are hearing about this program. We'll then go into the next section that really goes into capturing the working capital expenses and the technology expenses. And I forgot to mention that we can reimburse some working capital costs as well. So for example, if you did not pay rent over the last few months and you need to pay that rent, we can get you that. Or if you did pay, you know, and you really couldn't afford to, but you paid it, we can reimburse you for some of those costs. So we'll essentially, we have a few examples of the expenditures here, like rent, payroll, PPE, and others that I alluded to earlier, but we do have an other section as well. And we want you to note specifically if this is a cost that you've already taken on, or if it's going to be a new cost, so a future cost. And we want you to include all of that information here. We'll ask you the same information for the technology expenses. And again, we have a few different examples here for you. If there are others that you would like us to consider as a part of this program, you can include that here as well. We'll ultimately let you know if it's an eligible expense or if it isn't an eligible expense. And we have a lot of different rows here for you to add information. So please feel free to include that. It's required as a part of the application. And then we'll also ask you to provide just a general description on the information that you plugged in above. So for example, I paid my rent in April. I couldn't really afford to. I would like to be reimbursed on that so that can loosen up some of my cash flow as a business. Or I'm procuring this great point of sale system that allows me to do contactless payments, that also allows me to do appointment scheduling. We want that kind of information. And then we're getting really close to the end here. So we'll ask you for a schedule of ownership and what % of interest they have in the business. So again, a lot of folks that we've been working with have been just sole proprietors, meaning that they're the sole owner of the business, and they include that there. There are some partnerships out there where it might be two people that own like 50-50, but any information that you can provide us there, please provide it. And of course, if you have any questions, you can ask for help. And then at that point, we're basically getting ready to just wrap up the application, and you are asked to upload the required documents. So the ones I spoke to earlier: tax returns, financial statements, the ID, your W-9, and technology documentation. I do want to note, and it saddens me to say, but unfortunately this program, we cannot provide grant funding to our undocumented entrepreneurs because it's federal funding. We do realize, and we have data to show this, that our immigrant entrepreneurs are actually more entrepreneurial than some of our US citizens. So we are looking for opportunities to provide some support to our undocumented entrepreneurs, that many of them are have business licenses, are making their tax payments, but currently for this grant program, our undocumented population cannot apply for it, unfortunately. And then that's basically it. So that's a rundown of what the application process looks like. I know I provided a lot of information, and I need to take a drink of water here soon because I've been talking a lot. But I'm going to pause there and give Sharon an opportunity to provide any other comments before we jump into Q&A, and we'll go from there.